Open world games come in all shapes and sizes, but today we're talking about a very specific kind. Games with a feudal or medieval vibe. I'm talking swords, shields, steel, castles, caves, knights in armor, samurai in armor, and only very occasionally guns. I've clearly got a soft spot for that whole era, and judging by how often these games blow up, a lot of you do as well. So let's jump into some of the best open world games in this lane. Crimson Desert stands out because it understands that a great open world needs to condition you into being curious. Exploration here is genuinely rewarding, with a world that feels full of things to discover, stumble into, and mess around with. It's the kind of game that offers a ton of things you could do between where you're at and your next objective. It also helps that the game is loaded with systems. Combat, traversal, environmental interactions, puzzles, and a bunch of other moving parts all come together to make the world feel dense and active. That sense of variety is what gives Crimson Desert its edge. It doesn't just feel large, it feels like there's a lot going on inside that largeness. Being able to ride a dragon, pilot a mech, and what have you in the same game goes a long way, and that makes all the difference. At this point, Elden Ring barely needs an introduction. From Software took its famously demanding Souls action RPG formula and dropped it into a vast open world, which turned out to be the peanut butter to Dark Souls' jam. What makes Elden Ring special isn't only its huge world, or the sick evolution to Dark Souls combat, or the bajillion different weapons, or even the jaw-dropping gorgeous art style. It's all down to every part of its world feeling mysterious, dangerous, and worth exploring in the first playthrough. You're not just moving from objective marker to objective marker. You're stumbling into hidden ruins, terrifying bosses, underground cities, poison swamps, literally the best legacy dungeons ever, and entire quest lines that feel like secrets the game is almost reluctant to share with you. To add to that, Elden Ring is very replayable for numerous reasons. Co-op and PvP alongside a roster of very engaging boss fights are all super enjoyable. I've sunk countless hours experimenting with different builds for PvE and PvP, like many others, and it has been extremely enjoyable. Few games have set the standard for fantasy open worlds quite like The Witcher 3. Even years later, it's still one of the best examples of how to build a world that feels rich and lived in. A huge part of that comes down to writing and the overall theme. There are so many memorable quests, characters, and even monster encounters in this game. But beyond that, it's the world itself that really sells the experience. War-torn villages, dense forests, grim castles, monster-infested swamps, and cities that feel like they have their own pulse. It's medieval fantasy through and through, but with enough dirt, politics, and human ugliness to make it feel grounded. CD Projekt Red know they created a banger and have been supporting this game for over a decade. It's got a 60 FPS patch with up-to-date visual fidelity, so don't think of it as something super ancient. If most medieval games are interested in the fantasy of the era, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is far more interested in the reality of it, or at least a version of reality where every action you make has a lot of weight to it. I'm talking moment-to-moment stuff with consequences. That's what gives Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 its identity. The open world here isn't just a pretty backdrop either, it's part of the immersion. Villages, forests, roads, forts, and towns all contribute to a setting that feels convincingly historical. If you want a medieval open world without dragons and magic doing backflips in the background, this is one of the strongest picks out there. Dragon's Dogma 2 nails the feeling of setting out on a proper fantasy adventure. The pawn system gives the journey a real sense of companionship, while also offering a way to indirectly communicate with other players. Dragon's Dogma as a series has always had a bunch of very specific strong suits. Firstly, the animations. They've always been top of the line. Secondly, the combat lets you fight in a very unique way against enemies bigger than you by climbing them. This was and still is so satisfying, and also the best implementation of this kind of mechanic in any game. And then there's also the absolute cluelessness the game can induce by forcing you to figure things out yourself without hand-holding every step of a quest. You can fail quests in remarkable fashion, and I love it. The huge world and refined systems already make Dragon's Dogma 2 a strong adventure out of the gate, but the unmoored world is what really seals it. It turns the endgame into something so warped and hostile. I'm talking the oceans dry out, the color of the sky changes, it's like full-on Doomsday vibe. It's difficult, rewarding, and so unique at the same time. And by the way, its predecessor, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, was fire as well. Yes, it's the obvious pick. No, that doesn't make it any less valid. It just works alright. Skyrim remains one of the most iconic open-world fantasy games ever made because it understands something incredibly important: the joy of simply heading in a direction and seeing what happens. The feeling of wandering off the path, finding a cave, stumbling onto a dragon, joining a guild, becoming a werewolf, and somehow forgetting what your original plan was for the next 6 hours, that's Skyrim's whole magic trick. Its world may not be the most mechanically deep by today's standards, but the sense of freedom is still hard to beat. Snowy mountains, ancient ruins, warring factions, Nordic villages, old magic, and dragons in the sky. It delivers the fantasy of living inside a sprawling medieval-inspired world better than almost anything else. Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei stand out because both games blend open-world exploration with style, mood, and a very strong visual identity. These aren't just beautiful worlds for the sake of being beautiful. The landscapes are a huge part of how the games guide you, immerse you, and sell the fantasy of being a warrior moving through a land shaped by conflict. The combat in both is sharp, the worlds are elegant, and the overall experience feels cinematic without sacrificing player freedom. What makes them especially interesting as a duo is that despite being set far apart in the timeline, they still feel like they complement each other. Both tell very strong stories, but they do it through different eras, different circumstances, and different emotional textures. That gives each game its own identity while still making them feel spiritually connected. They may not be castles and knights medieval, but together they absolutely capture that same sense of stepping into a past shaped by war, steel, honor, and all that good stuff. Assassin's Creed Shadows deserves a mention because feudal Japan is such a strong fit for this kind of open-world fantasy, even without the fantasy part. The setting does a lot of heavy lifting, giving the game a distinct identity, while the dual protagonist structure adds variety to how you move through its world and approach its encounters. Brute forcing through hordes as Yasuke or stealthily bullying a whole castle as Naoe type thing aside, the combat in general is some of the best in any Assassin's Creed game. The hideout is a fun feature as well, letting you build one the way you like while also unlocking some useful resources. Then you have the visuals. The environments look amazing. So there you have it, some of the finest open world games out there if you're after that feudal or medieval flavor. Honestly, I'm now just waiting for the day we get enough sticks and stones open worlds featuring cavemen and fire. I will absolutely make a list of that, so stick around for that and do the algorithm stuff. Bye.